Hi everybody, welcome back to my LinkedIn Lives. I'm Jasmine Navarro, Certified Wellbeing Expert, working with educational institutions and companies, helping them support their family wellbeing challenges. And as you know, every week I interview different experts who make a difference. And today I'm super excited after a very, very long time to be interviewing Ed. Hi Ed, thank you so much for coming.
Hi, Jasmine. We were just laughing, weren't we? I think it's been about a year and a half probably since we spoke or tried to do this originally. So it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I previously was a teacher in North London, a science teacher who turned my hand to filmmaking, essentially match made the two. So used film and education to develop the skill of empathy. I've been doing that for over 5 years now. And I've recently made Empathy Studios, which is an education and creative organization that use the power of film to develop that skill of empathy. And we also run Empathy Week, which some educators may have heard of, which is the world's largest empathy festival. And that's free. That festival is free for any educator, any school, anywhere in the world. So yeah, basically love empathy and think it is the most vital skill, which is what we've kind of named this session.
Wow, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I'm so excited to dive into your topic today. So you chose empathy. Is it the most important 21st century skill? Such a great question. Can you tell us what made you come up with that question for today and what does it mean?
Yeah, the answer is yes. So if you want to if you want a
Oh,
quick
right. Okay.
a quick answer, the answer is yes. But what made me choose that? I think we are at a really crucial point in our world of technological advances. We hear about AI a lot, especially no matter what industry actually you're in. I'm obviously predominantly in education. Hear
Yeah.
about it a lot, how it can save time, all of these things. But actually, what research is showing, whether it's from the OECD, whether it's from the World Education Forum, World Economic Forum as well, that actually the skills that we need to thrive and survive and that are going to make us successful and happy are the human skills. So those are the ones we're not focusing on, yet they're the ones that are important for jobs, for economic growth, as well
Yeah.
as obviously our personal and professional well-being. And I just think education is at this point, especially in the country that I'm in, the UK, just had a change of government. I think most countries in the world are having a change of government this year. Something like 60% or
Wow.
half the world are having a general election as such. And we're at this point where we need to say, actually, is our education system working the best it could possibly be? Are our institutions working in the best possible way? And we hear a lot about well-being. We hear a lot about mental health. And I just think this is the skill that fundamentally sits at the foundation of all other human skills. So if you
Mm.
name a skill to me that you think is important, I can almost definitely link it to empathy. So whether it's communication, leadership, it might be creativity, all of these sit with a foundation of empathy. So you can't have great
Yeah.
anything else human skill wise without empathy at the foundation. So why are we not focusing on building that? And that's what we're doing and why I think it's so vital.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So I'm going to ask you a few questions about this. So first of all, let's go back to basics. Can you define empathy in your own words?
Yeah, so we define it as the skill to understand another and ability to create space for someone to reveal their authentic self whilst reserving judgment. So when I pick that apart, crucially, it's a skill. It's not an act or a trait. People talk about it as a value. It's a skill. Therefore, it can be practiced. It can be improved, and you can get better at it. You can also get worse at it. And
Yeah.
also, this idea of creating space and allowing someone to reveal their authentic self. We hear about authenticity a lot, but ultimately it's really getting to understand someone else, and crucially we say reserving judgment. So not judging. Everyone always says, oh, don't judge people. The reality, you judge. I come from a
Yeah,
science
exactly.
background. I had a biochemistry degree. I spent a
Mm.
year working in a lab actually, and you can't not judge. We are
Yeah.
genetically wired to judge dangers around us, to make sense of the world. What we have to do is realize that our kind of instincts that we've had for survival in the past are maybe not needed in such intensity anymore. And we have to see someone for who they really are, which means effort. But if I was to put that definition into one word, it would be understanding. Easy. Synonym would be
Mhm.
understanding. So I think a
I
lot of
love
people get
that.
empathy mixed up. and we see
Yeah.
it as a neutral. Understanding is neutral, so you can understand someone you don't agree
Yeah.
with as much as someone you do agree with. So
Yeah.
if you come from a place of empathy, people immediately think kindness, love, compassion. All those things are linked, of course, but
Yeah.
you can be empathetic to someone that maybe isn't deserving of your love or kindness in that moment, because
Oh,
that is
wow.
actually the resolver. So we look at it as this skill to understand and try and, I was just in Germany with 400 plus educators at the weekend,
Wow.
and trying to retrain the way that they see empathy so that they can embed that skill into their schools and into their students. Because really I talk about empathy as both a vitamin and a painkiller. So it can help prevent conflict, it can help prevent certain situations. Of course, if you have more understanding, you have more knowledge of how someone operates, what they like to do, how they like to be talked to, how they like to operate, you are going to essentially avoid some conflict or friction. And
Yeah.
likewise, if, on the flip side, if there is conflict and friction and something's happened or there's been a misunderstanding, empathy is also the skill to get you back to a place of harmony. And an example of this would be
Absolutely. Yeah.
a great woman that I always talk about, Jo Berry, whose father was killed in 1984 IRA bombings in Brighton. Her father was killed by a man called Pat McGee, who planted the bomb. And if you research Jo Berry and Pat McGee, you'll see that they've shared a stage over 300 times, probably 400 by this point. Shared a platform, sat next to each other. They talk about how Joe's empathy and also Pat's empathy brought them together. So when he was released on the Good Friday Agreement, they had, managed meetings, but they met up together. And it was Joe's empathy, her actually wanting to understand, speak to Pat, that allowed them to connect. I don't know if I could sit next to the man that would have killed
Yeah.
my father. So it's just an amazing, powerful example that empathy is not a soft skill, but actually that
Yeah.
it's so vital.
Yeah. No, I love what you were saying. And a few things came up when you were saying that. First of all, when you said about understanding, that really resonated with me, because I think when you feel misunderstood, it just creates like a barrier between you and that person, doesn't it? So many times
Mm.
I feel misunderstood. I might say something to somebody, or, and the way they interpret it, I just think, yes, I feel so misunderstood. They haven't understood me. And you just feel so like unseen. You feel, not acknowledged. And you, like I said, there's this distance between you. So I think the opposite can create connection,
Mhm.
the safe space, so many positive things. And also when you said about understanding, I was thinking, but sometimes we might not actually understand, but then you did say later, the willingness to understand. It's not just about understanding, is it? It's about actually being open enough to be willing to understand,
Mhm.
even if you don't understand.
100%. And most people say define empathy, and I do this, with a survey, and people will say walking in someone else's shoes, and
Yeah.
ultimately that is not correct anymore. We live in a global, diversified world where, there are now 50 languages spoken in schools across the world. That didn't happen 20 years ago, let alone,
Yeah.
5 years ago. How much we've in the diversity, the local diversity. So in the UK, neighborhood diversity has on average doubled in towns and cities. And in some
Wow.
places, as high as 10 times in the past 20 years, looking at census data. So, of course, this brings friction, differences in religion, culture, what you eat, background, language. Differences cause friction, but what we need to be able to do is get along, to be able to understand. And it's not
Yeah.
helpful for me. I've filmed in rural Nepal, India, Mexico City. Um, it's not helpful
Wow.
for me to come into someone's life when I'm filming them and say, "Oh, I get it now. I've been in your house. I understand how hard it is to live in, these conditions or this
Yeah.
difficulty." Or I filmed a guy, Kike, who I'm now very close to in Mexico City. He's got diabetes. Imagine me saying to him, who's never had diabetes, "Oh yeah, I get what it must be like." Like I've walked in your shoes. The problem with this
Oh,
expression, walk in someone else's shoes, is that you bring all of your past experiences previously into those shoes. So you still see the world from your point of view.
yes.
You've just
Yes.
changed the conditions that you're in.
Yes.
So COVID's a great
Yeah.
example. We're all in the same boat, as some politicians would have said. Well, actually, no, we're not. We're all in the same storm, but we all have different boats, and some of us don't have boats
Yes.
at all. And it's this
Yes.
idea that Brené Brown also said, who used to like say, walk in someone else's shoes. If you look up a more recent quote from her, she'll say, actually, empathy is about trying to get to that place of understanding someone, but crucially, believing someone when they tell their own experiences,
Oh, yes. Yeah, you
even
don't have to understand. Yeah.
even if it doesn't match your own. And it's
Yeah.
that belief in someone else's experiences, and it's
Wow.
that comparison between your own.
I
And
love that.
ultimately, I love what you said earlier about being seen and understood. We talk about it all the time. Ultimately, especially, when we talk about well-being, if you can make someone feel seen, heard, and understood, those three things together, if you can do that well, essentially encapsulates belonging. And
Yes.
ultimately, we are all looking for belonging constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's that thing, if you think about your highest level of well-being when you're at your best, if you look back on that, what you'll find is that most likely your relationships were in a really great place. And if you track back to that, those
Definitely.
relationships were built on trust. Trust is built on connection, and connection is built on understanding. And what's the one word synonym, or the relationship? Understanding and empathy. So if you develop the skill of empathy, you increase understanding. That enables you to connect with people better. That connection can
Mm.
build trust. That
Yeah.
trust can build better relationships.
Yeah.
And better
Yeah.
relationships are ultimately the foundation of well-being, positive behavior.
Yeah.
And we know
Love
teams
that.
and companies perform better. We know that children will have higher levels of attendance at school. That is why we focus on, it's a really, for something that people think is untangible, empathy is incredibly tangible if you put
Yeah.
the time in and if you put the effort in to build it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would say it's actually could be a coaching skill, because, in
100%.
coaching, if we're coaching somebody, it's really so important that it's not about us, and it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant if we understand what our client is saying. It's totally irrelevant. It's just, we're just there to, see them, hear them, acknowledge them, and connect with them, and they'll figure it out. We're just there with them. So I don't know, do you think it's similar then to what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
empathy falls into so many categories of
Right. Yeah.
um, different other skills, whether it's coaching, mentoring, leading as well. And I
Okay.
think sometimes people confuse empathy with being pushover or soft.
Oh,
And we talk, we do leadership and empathy sort of workshops connected together. And being a leader means you have to make tough decisions, no matter what type of leadership you go after,
yeah.
whether, and ultimately empathy is about understanding. And people, again, it's this problem with empathy being linked directly to kindness. It's empathy means you're able to understand and you're connecting with someone. And you can say, right, I'm taking my company in this direction. Now, the empathetic leadership sort of stance on that is, right, you would talk to your staff, understand their worries, their feelings, collect maybe like this data around how they're feeling.
Yeah.
And you can still make the decision to go in that direction. But now that you've heard their worries, where they're coming from, you can say to them, look, I'm making an executive decision on this. However, I have heard what you've said. I've taken that into consideration. I've maybe tweaked that bit, but this is why we're doing it. And,
Mhm.
over time, if there's still loads and loads and loads of conflict, maybe that person isn't the right culture fit for your company. And that's fine as well. And that doesn't have to be some sort of like massive battle and turn into a legal battle and turn into like disgruntled employees.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
about communicating in the right
Yeah.
way. And I think that, that's,
Respect. About respect as well. Yeah.
yeah,
Respect our
yeah.
differences. No, that's brilliant. And I just want to say hi to everybody who's joining, because we've got a lot of people on Instagram and also here LinkedIn. So we're talking about empathy being the most important 21st century skill. Please let us know any comments or questions. And hi, Terence, how are you? Terence says, can empathy become enabling?
Oh, so in the sense that it can become all encompassing and limit you, is that what Terence is
Is
getting
that what
at?
you mean, Terence?
But I would suggest that the interesting thing about empathy, like leadership, is that
Yeah.
there are lots of different versions of it and ways that it can be involved. And some people will talk about having too much empathy, and I think that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
can be that can be true.
Yeah.
However, I like to think that if you train yourself in the skill of empathy, we talk
Yeah.
about it in a frame. We have our framework that you also have empathy for yourself as well as for others. And part
Yeah.
of that is self-regulation, understanding your own. You don't to be fully empathetic. You don't have to then go and save the world, help everyone in need, understand everyone, or listen to everyone. You can also understand that you need some time for yourself as well. And so when I talk about training the skill of empathy, I think it's not about let's just become as understanding and listen to everyone and take on everyone's issues. And I think that's what people think of
Mm.
in terms of
Yeah.
empathy. They think sometimes, okay, this person's told me this, so therefore I must help them. Actually, listen to yourself and think, how can I help this person to maybe help themselves? Or maybe actually I'm just in a position in my life where I can't help them. So how can I communicate that? Um, I think it is one of the hardest skills to develop. I think part of my interest in it is links back
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
when I
tell
was
us.
teaching.
Right.
Um, and I always talk about this group of young men that I inherited. They were on their GCSEs, they're year 11, so they're 15, 16 years old. And they
Yeah.
called themselves the U Gang because they all got ungraded. They all failed
Oh,
all of their mock grades, and they came up the stairs. It was a U. We now have numbers in the UK, but it was a U back then.
yeah, I
And they all
remember the
chanting "You
yeah.
Gang, You Gang," and I'm petrified. And I didn't call it empathy at the time, but I set out on to understand what makes every one of these young men tick, and not to absorb that, not to then feel sorry for them, and not to like get
No.
squashed in it, to understand what makes you tick. Is it football? Is it sport? How many brothers and sisters do you have? What's your situation at home? What's going to get you sat in your seat? And I practiced it, and I think looking back on it now, you know, I understand that having the time and space to develop that skill of empathy is so important, and actually
Oh,
practicing it.
yeah.
And the reality is that you will never get everything right because you are only your own person. You only
Yeah.
have your own worldview. You can study
Yeah.
every single issue, every single experience someone else has had. You will still only see it from your lens. The skill of empathy just allows you to push that barrier a little bit further, allow you to see from a different perspective and a
Mhm.
different lens.
No,
And then,
yeah.
yeah,
No, I think it's brilliant what you're saying. And I think, yeah, also, like you said, well, you didn't actually say, but it sounds like you're saying, it's not about pity. We don't need pity. Nobody needs pity. You know, like that's not what those students needed that day, was it? For you to give them pity. We want to be inspired and we want to feel empowered. We don't want people to feel sorry for us. So actually, so empathy. So, okay, two questions. So first of all, how can we start learning about empathy? Like, what can we do? What's like really important for us to do when we're communicating? And how much empathy do we need? I know you sort of answered that, but because it's hard, isn't it? Like you said, it's not like about saving the world. So where do
I
we
don't
start
think
with this?
I'd flip that question and say, how much leadership do
Okay.
we need?
Oh, okay,
And and
okay.
and again, if you think about empathy in comparison to leadership, I always say, with leadership, how come no one solved it? Because there's literally a million books. The leadership way, or leadership this, or this
Yeah,
is my
yeah.
story on leadership. There isn't that in empathy yet, but I see it in that way. Empathy is so nuanced and contextual, as is leadership, that it's impossible to put like a value of how much empathy is
Yeah.
valuable. And it's again situational. It depends on who the people are. Are we talking about empathy for each other? Are we talking about empathy for the planet? Are we talking, that is almost like an impossible question to answer
Is
that
it?
one.
Is
But
this
in
right?
terms of, because I
Yeah,
don't know what your
you're
level will
right.
be
You're
compared to
right.
mine, but in
Mm.
terms of where to start, the quickest, simplest answer is increase the amount and the diversity of experiences you have. That by far will help you to
Helps.
become more empathetic, even if you're not aware of it. So if you have the capacity to travel, you will see different worlds. You will be welcomed into people's homes. The further you can get off the tourist trail as well, the more you will probably learn. But obviously that isn't, um, not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
Hence why we use film, because it's a really scalable way to introduce the worlds and different lives of people into the context of their own life, and be able to reflect, but increase the amount and diversity of experiences that you have. So let's talk digital. Your algorithm on your Instagram that some of you are watching this on, What do you follow? What do you listen to? What news sources are you following and listening to? Do you listen to the ones that really irritate you? Because I'm saying, actually, maybe you should follow them, because millions of other people are following them. And so what we have at the moment is this increased polarity and polarized world driven by the digital algorithms, which mean that I watch all this news and see it from this point of view. You watch the same news story but see it from this point of view. When we meet in real life, we get like this, or digitally, rather than, okay, I can actually understand. I don't agree with it, but I can understand your point of view because I've watched this. But I'll tell you why this is I do. If you love winning arguments like I do and you're stubborn, it's nothing. It doesn't hurt to be equipped knowing what other people are watching and what other people are saying and what other people believe, because that's how you become better at debating. But also, it allows you to see and understand the world from someone else's lens. So change, switch up your algorithm, change it in that way. But also, listen to different podcasts, listen to stories. I mean, stories are a fantastic way. That's how we've learned throughout the whole of humanity. It's always been storytelling. So yeah, increase the amount of diversity of experience, read different books, the arts. Ironically, the things that are being squashed out of education curriculums, the things that get less funding from governments are the arts. They are the things that help us connect more than ever with other people with different cultures. Art, music, theatre, film, music, all of it.
Why is that? Why does that help us connect more?
Because you're able to hear different perspectives. You're able to understand different stories. You are able to.
Right.
Why are there different music from different cultures? Theatre, you're listening again. You're getting into the world of other people. Fiction, especially in children's books, has been particularly good at developing that skill of empathy, and so is film, because it can transport you to a world outside of your own perspective.
Yeah,
almost like getting a pin. Everyone walks around with this like massive bubble around their head of their own perspective, and every time you're increasing the diversity of experiences you're having, you're popping it. It's just, and then it extends a little bit further. Everyone's probably aware of the comfort zones circle diagram. They've probably done it at school or work. I like to think of it as in almost empathy as well. Like, you have your own perspective, a worldview, where inside that inner circle, your comfort zone is actually your empathy zone, or your easiest empathy zone, which is like your close family and friends and the people that you trust so near to you. And then outside might be your extended friends and family, and outside of that might be your acquaintances or work. And you have these layers of people that you can empathize with. And ultimately, the more people you meet, the less shocked you're going to be by different things, the more you're going to be able to connect. You know why is it you go on holiday and you hear an accent, you start speaking to someone? Or not everyone does, but some people will be. Like, if you're really far away from somewhere, like I've been in the middle of Uganda, for example, or in India, you meet someone where all of a sudden you're the person that's different. You meet someone, you're like, oh my gosh, what's your name? But you don't do that with anyone else. It's because we like to feel seen, heard, and understood. We like to belong, and we find people that are like us because they are able to connect. We are able to instantly connect with them better just by, oh, you're from here. We have more in common. We can talk about things.
Safe, familiar, yeah,
familiar, safe. We do that naturally. But like I said at the start, the world is more diverse, and we need to be able to understand different cultures. That person's off from work, if you're in a global team, because actually they're celebrating a festival that you maybe hadn't heard of or didn't even realize was now. That happens now. Yet we have this culture where we're not learning enough about other people. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah. Do you think as well, I know you did touch on this, that the more empathy we have for ourselves, then the more empathy we'll have for other people? Do you think there's a connection there? So again, it's starting with us.
I think you have to empathize with yourself first before you can truly empathize with others. And most people will be thinking empathy for myself means loving myself. It doesn't at all. For me, it means understanding I am a tall, white, male, straight, born in the UK, have both my parents together, have had a great education. I literally almost have won the lottery in terms of how the world's panned out. I've essentially had all the sort of privileges that society for some reason has granted people. And I have to be super aware of that when I'm telling people's stories in film. I put in the LinkedIn chat, I put a comment which is Nico's story. We've made it live for 48 hours. He is from a poor background in Mexico City, was made blind when he was 20 years old, and then won 2 bronze medals in the Paralympics. Imagine I turned up and went, Nico, don't worry, I've listened to your story. I know, I get it. Yeah, do you think that's
Yeah.
gonna really cut it with him? Or do you go, right, I'm gonna shut up for a minute, which obviously I'm clearly not that great at doing because I like talking. But I'm gonna be quiet and I'm gonna listen to you. And it's
Yeah.
why before I put films out there to the world, I check with the people that are in them. Because I come from my world, my privileged worldview.
Yes. Yes.
But at the same time, I don't have to feel guilty about that.
No.
Guilt
No.
Guilty for being privileged causes inaction, I think, in a lot of people. So
Yeah.
it's about
Paralyzes you.
recognizing where you come from, and therefore when you do meet someone, also on the flip side, not pitying them and not offering them sympathy.
Yeah.
People don't
Yeah.
want that. They want to be
Yeah.
understood. They don't want pity.
Yes.
They want
Yes.
sympathy.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Gratitude
understanding
as well.
yourself
Gratitude.
allows you, yeah.
No, I love that. I love that. Yeah. And tell us, I know we haven't got that much time, but we could talk about this for so long. But yeah, tell us about the work that you're doing now, because it just sounds absolutely fascinating.
Great. So yeah, in a nutshell, using power of film to develop the skill of empathy. We have our empathy program. Our latest one was released at the start of September. And ultimately what we do is every year we create for 5 to 18-year-olds a 5-film program that also has empathy action projects and a global empathy awards at the end of it, that schools can buy into. And what happens is students watch these films, discuss them, have lessons about them. And the most powerful thing about it, which I didn't realize when I first started doing this 5-6 years ago, is that not only do they develop empathy for the people in the films, they actually develop empathy more for themselves. Because what
Wow.
happens is a hand goes up in class, Miss, actually, I've felt a bit like that. They have a role model, someone they can bounce their own feelings off. And then, someone sat next to them goes, they don't even have to say
Gives them
anything. All of a sudden,
permission. It gives them permission.
give them permission. It's an enabler. We call it a Trojan horse. From the outside,
Wow.
it's this shiny cinematic film, beautiful music, really engaging. Inside of it is a way to navigate difficult conversations, to talk about societal issues, to talk about things that matter to them, to help and get support if they are struggling, for their teachers and students to become more empathetic together. So that's our empathy program. We make it as cheap as possible. It usually works out about £1 a child for a whole term's worth. We are ex-teachers that make it, so it's made by qualified teachers. I'm not sure how many filmmaker qualified teachers are out there, so I think that's one of our
I think you're the
USPs.
first one I've met. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm sure there are, but yeah. So we do that, and then also Empathy Studios, which is our organisation, makes Empathy Week, which is a non-profit festival, which helps anyone develop is sort of the first step into developing the skill of empathy. That has, again, film snippets that we make, a couple of them. It has teach training for teachers, live primary assemblies, 5 people this year telling their own story on demand. And then we do live events in the UK. Hopefully, maybe one day we'll come out to Dubai and host some events
Oh,
there.
definitely. Definitely.
Live
Please
empathy
do.
shows. Yeah, all sorts.
And let
So
me know.
those
Let me know. Because I know a lot
I
of
will do.
schools here. But what was I going to say? No, it sounds absolutely amazing. So you go to many countries then doing this.
Yeah, so and that's the other thing is what we found, and we've recently released research with Cambridge University as well, which has shown that you can improve the skill of empathy, and if teachers have reported if you can do that in their schools, that they've also seen improved behaviour. So there's a slight
Wow.
correlation there,
Yeah.
but ultimately this is a sustained. Think of it like the gym. You have to keep training it, and so every year we have 5
Like
films.
everything.
And if you think about a child from 5 years old to the age of 18, they'll have watched 65 different people's life stories before they go out into the world. They'll have met, so far, we've filmed people with Down syndrome, people that talk about microaggressions, people that talk about the power of music, the power of sport, their passion
Wow.
for entrepreneurship, diabetes, being blind, but seeing it in a really positive way, as well as Paralympic sport. There are
Yeah.
so many issues that we have
Yeah.
covered, but in a really
Yeah.
human, cinematic
Yeah.
way that is actually joyous and that enables connection. And schools come back year on year, so we know we're
No, I
doing
think.
something right.
Oh, definitely. It sounds like you're doing absolutely a life-changing work. And I think even one story can change one person's life. Just hearing
Yeah.
one story. Yeah. So all of those stories, of course, it's creating so much impact. No, I think it's really amazing all of the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for coming today. And please, can
Thank
you
you.
put all of those links to everything that you do on the post so people can just click on it and have a look at the work that you do
I will
and
do.
contact you if they need to. No, thank you so much, Ed. And is there anything else you want to say before we go?
No, just reach out if you're interested. You can find us at empathystudios.com, and then also Empathy Week, which is the free festival, empathy-week.com.
Yeah. If you could put all those links in the
absolutely.
post as well. Yeah. Amazing. Sorry, anything, were you going to say something else before I just interrupted?
No, just that empathy is the answer to the question is yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ed. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody else, for joining. If you have any questions or comments, please message Ed directly or on the post. That's absolutely fine. All next week.